Okay, guys. First off, no, we won't do that. I'm Coach Tregs, and welcome to my podcast. Okay, guys. Thank you all for joining me. My name is Coach Tregs, and welcome to the third edition of the newly updated Coach Tregs podcast. Tonight, I am joined by somebody virtually who has massively inspired me in my life and has also inspired a lot of our clients. This has taken a lot of back and forth to actually make happen. But I have a saying, which I use a lot, which says, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I am absolutely delighted and super grateful to be joined tonight by ultramarathon man, Dean Karnazes. How are you, Dean?
It's good to be on. So thank you for having me run by. Yeah, I'm glad we're chatting.
Honestly, I've been really excited about this, and I had this kind of little niggling feeling that maybe you wouldn't show up for some reason. So as soon as I set the interview up and seen you waiting in the Zoom area, I was really happy. So Dean, we're gonna obviously let you do a little bit of talking in a minute, but just for anyone, guys, that is discovering my podcast for the first time and maybe for some reason has been living under a rock and doesn't know about Dean, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this guy. Dean is a 58-year-old ultramarathon runner. I hope I got that right. He once ran 135 miles across Death Valley in 131 degrees. He's also run a marathon in the South Pole in 45 degrees. And amongst lots of other crazy things, he once run 50 marathons in 50 states in the US across 50 days. Have I got all that right, Dean?
So far, so good. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Dean, I really, there's so much I want to talk about, and we've got about 45 minutes, and I've got lots of questions from my clients who are really excited about you being on. But for me, I would really like to start it when, in your original book, Ultramarathon Man, you released in 2005. I think I picked it up in 2010, and I've been in the fitness industry a couple of years, but always been into my running. And I remember reading when you were saying, you had this kind of like, you were just approaching 30, you had a nice job, nice car, but you weren't fulfilled. And you went out for drinks on your 30th birthday with your buddies, and you were in a bar, and you just left, and you just started running. And that was that. Can you talk us through that, my friend?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I did everything that I thought would bring me happiness. So I went to university, and then I went to graduate school, and then I went to business school, and I got a business degree, an MBA, and I landed a very comfortable corporate job. I had a fat paycheck, I had stock options, company car, all the perks you imagine with a really high paying job. And inside I was deeply unfulfilled. And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in a bar, in a pub, in a nightclub with my buddies in San Francisco. And at midnight, I told them I was leaving, and they said, where are you going? It's your 30th birthday. Let's have another round of tequila. And I said, no, I'm gonna run 30 miles right now to celebrate instead. And they looked at me and they said, but you're not even a runner, you're drunk. And I said, yeah, I am drunk, but I'm still gonna do it. And I walked out of the nightclub. I didn't even own running gear at the time, but I had some silk boxer shorts on, some silk underwear. So I'll never forget, I took off my pants and threw them down the alleyway. And I knew there was a city called Half Moon Bay that was 30 miles from San Francisco. And I said, see if you can run there. And I stumbled off into the night, and somehow I made it. It took about 7.5 hours, and that night forever changed the course of my life.
Absolutely incredible. And I think, if I recall, didn't you call your wife or something, or she called you? She's like, where are you? And you're like, yeah, I'm like 30 miles away. Can you come and pick me up?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the date of the book, so before cell phone, so I called it from a pay phone.
Wow.
And she said, it's unlike you. Like, you've never done this before. You've never been out all night. Are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. I just need a ride. And she said, no questions asked. I'll come get you where you at. And I said, I'm in front of 7-Eleven, which is like a convenience store. And she thought I was talking about the 7-Eleven a few blocks from our house. And I said, no, in 7-Eleven in Half Moon Bay. And she said, how did you get there? And I said, I ran. And she said, you don't sound very stable. Just hold tight and I'll be right there.
Wow. Just wow. So you said, obviously, you're 30 years old and life changed right there for you. What happened next?
I became a runner. So I started running daily. And, I was running 5 or 6 miles a day. And I thought I was, getting in really good shape. And I was maybe the fittest guy there was. And then I got passed by 2 guys that were at a next level. I mean, they were as though they were a different species. And they ran up over a hill, and I thought, wow, those guys are like taking fitness to a new level. And I wish I could talk to them, but they were gone. But when I got up to the top of the hill, I found them doing push-ups on the pavement. So I started talking to them, and they said they were training for a 50-mile run. And I thought, hold it, 50 miles? Like, how many days does that take? Where are the hotels? Where are the campgrounds along the way? And the guy's like, no, buddy, the gun goes off, and you finish when you reach the finish line. There's no hotels, there's no camping. And it just blew my mind. I thought a human being cannot run 50 miles. So I thought I got to try this. It's crazy, but I got to try it. So I signed up for that 50-mile race.
Okay. And so how was that?
It was the toughest thing I'd ever done in my whole life. I mean, it laid me out. There were moments where, I thought I might die. I was in so much pain, and it was so difficult to do. And I was in the medical tent at the finish, and those 2 guys walked by, and they were high-fiving each other, congratulating each other, saying they just qualified. And I said, what did you qualify for, the insane asylum? And they said, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run. And wow. I said, what? 100 miles? Tell me about this race. And they said, well, you start at the base of a ski resort in Lake Tahoe. You run over the mountain, through the snow. You run into a river in the middle of the night. You run with a headlamp on, and you try to finish within 24 hours. And I couldn't get my head around this idea. I thought that's impossible. Like, a human being cannot run 100 continuous miles. And the last thing they said to me before they left is, you know what, you qualified as well. And when they said that to me, I thought, I will never live my life complete unless I try. I will never live down those words unless I try this race. So I signed up for the Western States 100-mile endurance run.
So, wow, I know this story because I've read the book, but just for the listeners. So when you started to prepare for this 100-mile endurance run, okay, what happened with your work and your career? Like, because obviously we know you've been doing this now for over 20 years, but what happened? How did you make that transition?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying it's the scariest thing I've ever done. And you can relate to it because you forged a course on your own as well. And it's stepping away from the security of a paycheck and,
yep.
Free healthcare, all those kind of things is terrifying. But I slowly started transitioning into becoming more of a runner and an athlete and, less of a corporate guy. But I'll be honest, I made a lot of sacrifices. I had to. I had a family, I had young kids on the way. So I'd get up at, 3, 4 in the morning and I'd train before work. And then, at work over lunchtime when, my workmates were going out to have lunch, I'd say, no, I'm going for a training run. So I'd run for an hour and I'd just kind of sponge myself off in the bathroom and, put my suit back on and go to work. And, I was living this kind of double life.
Sure.
And it was pretty exhausting, but it was also very exciting.
Wow. So let's get on to that first ever 100-miler. Let's talk about it. And I have got some questions about that as well, but I'll come on to that. Just really tell us about what that experience was like, Dean.
It's doing the impossible. It's doing something you never thought a human could do. And I'll never forget at the starting line, before they sent us off, before the gun went off, they gave a little speech and they said, those of you that make it, and not all of you will, you'll be forever changed by the experience. You'll cross that finish line as a fundamentally different person than the one standing here at the starting line. And I didn't understand what that meant until the race got underway. And, it's as though you're not going to finish 50 times. You have so much self-doubt, and you're in so much pain, and you're climbing tens of thousands of feet, up another mountain, down the other side of a mountain. You're crossing a river. You're dehydrated. You're hungry. Your muscles are screaming in agony, and you somehow, have the willpower and the internal fortitude to keep going. And you're nearly crawling when you reach the finish line, but it's the most gratifying thing I've ever done.
So how many runners took part in that 100-miler?
There was about 370 runners. And sometimes in that race, because I've done the race a number of times now, but sometimes, 100 people don't make it.
Wow. So I want to talk about, some of the mental battles and some of the things that you have found out about yourself. Because I know you talk about a lot of this in the book, and that kind of like that whole journey of self-discovery. What kind of places did you go to, on that run and on subsequent runs? Because, you've been running out in the desert and stuff like that. What did you discover about yourself? Where did you go? What did you learn?
Yeah, well, I mean, few other sports hold a mirror up to you like running does. I mean, running forces you to look at yourself and see what you're made of, because, you have a reckoning, a quote unquote, come to Jesus moment where you just think, I can't do it. I can't take another step. And you somehow, you find the internal, will and might to keep forging onward. And there are races where, I've been out there I ran 50 marathons and all the 50 US states in 50 days. I mean, there were moments where I thought this whole thing is going to come to an end at marathon 19. Like, you can't even get out of bed this morning. How are you going to run a marathon, let alone 31 more on top of that in the next 31 days? And, what I do is I don't focus on the future at that point. I put on the blinders to the future. I don't reflect on the past. I just force myself to be in the here and now, in the present moment of time, and just do the very best I can in that moment. So I say to myself, just take your next footstep to the best of your ability. Okay. Take your next footstep to the best of your ability. Don't think about the future. Don't think how far you've got to go. Don't think about anything except your next footstep. And sometimes I'll be in that state for 4 or 5 hours. It's almost like a Zen-like state. And you can get through a lot if you can just be in the present moment and not get ahead of yourself.
Incredible. So you complete the first ever 100-miler. Okay. How were you at the finish line? Were you a changed man?
Absolutely. I proved them, you proved to yourself you're better than you think you are, and you can go further than you think you can.
Yeah.
So it kind of unlocked, finishing that race unlocked a world of possibilities.
Amazing. Okay. There's many other things I want to talk about, but I don't want to miss any of my clients' questions. Okay. So, I've got a very good friend called John over in Ireland, and he's currently running 30 half marathons in 30 days in memory of his dad, who passed away last year. And he's got 2 races to go. He's doing really, really well, is John. So well done, John. That's awesome. And he just messaged me 10 minutes. He said, Tregs, he said, I know you're about to jump on with Dean. He said, can you ask what his pace was on his first 100-mile run? Because I'm seriously considering it as a challenge. John is 47 soon. He's in great shape. He loves his running, and he's really considering this. So what advice and what sort of pace could you advise?
Well, the thing with pace is when you're running, it's hard to say what the pace is, because at some points you're running, 7-minute miles. At other points, you're hiking 18-minute miles, because you're hiking up the side of a mountain where you're almost on all fours. So, to keep a consistent pace during a mountainous ultramarathon is almost impossible. During a flat track run, I've run, 150 miles in 24 hours.
Wow.
So I don't know what that calculates to be, but that's a different challenge because you're just, you're not dealing with altitude or climbing or descending. You're just straight out running.
So 150 miles in how many hours?
In one day, in 24 hours.
No sleep, nothing, just
No sleep.
trucking.
Yeah, just running.
Amazing. Okay, so hopefully that's helped John out on there. Okay, I've got a few more here, Dean. Just before I ask some more my clients' questions, I mean, you've been doing this now for 25 years. Can you pick out like 2 or 3 real highlights and maybe 2 or 3 real lowlights? Because if we were just to cover all of your races, we'd be here all day. But is there anything that really stands out as highlights and lowlights for you?
Yeah, I mean, one time I ran a marathon to the South Pole, and it was supposed to be an inaugural event, like it was supposed to be 40 or 50 people coming to the South Pole to run this, inaugural South Pole marathon. Well, there were 3 of us that ended up trying it, and it's never been done since. So certainly running a marathon to the South Pole was a pinnacle moment. Running 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days was another pinnacle moment. I've won the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is a 135-mile continuous foot race across Death Valley in the middle of summer.
Wow. Yeah, I heard all about that from listening to David Goggins as well.
Yeah, so I've won that race. I beat Goggins.
Whoa! Hey, amazing.
What other highlights? I mean, I think the biggest career highlight for me though is running a 10-kilometer race, and that's because I ran a 10K with my daughter Alexandria on her 10th birthday.
Amazing. And how old are your children now? I mean, I expect they're grown up now and in their 20s, right?
They're in their early 20s. Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah. My boys are 8 and 7, and the whole of my kind of philosophy and message is that your kids are always watching. Your kids are always watching, and they're like sponges and they absorb it. And when I was going through the book today, and listening to other stuff you've done, it was amazing to see that that your kids got involved as well, like helping out as like crew, and also your parents come along to a lot of your races, which is incredible. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think no runner is an island, and we know that when we get into endurance sports or we get into whatever sport it is we enjoy, be it CrossFit or Tough Mudder or Spartan races, triathlons, it's all consuming. And it changes your identity. It doesn't matter if you still have a job. Your identity is hooked to being an ultra marathoner or being a Spartan racer or whatever it might be. And it inevitably impacts your relationships in a big sort of way. I mean, you realize this. It impacts your relationships with your parents, with your friends, with your kids, with your spouse. So, when I wrote my latest book, A Runner's High, I thought I had to tell an honest story. And the only way to tell an honest story is to talk about my role as a father, and how, I've screwed up at points. I've done things that I regret, and, how's that impacted my kids? And so I thought I had to bring them into the story. And as well as, my parents have just been the greatest source of inspiration for me. I had to include them. I mean, they've been along on this ride with me in so many ways, and, they're just always there. They're always supporting me. And when I was a kid, I thought it was kind of weird. My dad was at every sporting event I was at. Yeah, a lot of times I didn't want him there. But then I had friends who, I had mates whose dads were never there. And now when I look back on it, I think I had the best dad in the world.
Exactly. Amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. And what about your wife? How does she cope with it all? Because I mean, you've obviously, you've put yourself into like near death at times, and you're obviously away and you're training at crazy hours. How does that impact your marriage?
I married my high school sweetheart. So I started going out with my wife when we were 14 years old. And she's the most supportive, understanding person that I know. She's always supported what I do, and she's always been there for me. So, I found a good one at age 14, and I figured,
wow.
Watching all my friends go through these tough relationships, I'm like, I don't need that. I found a good one. Let's make it last.
Amazing, amazing. And one of the things I recall reading your initial book was how she was obviously part of the support crew, and you were doing a running in the desert in full protective gear, and she's driving alongside in like some kind of camper vehicle, like feeding you like pizza through the window. Is that that's right? Yeah.
That's absolutely true. But I mean, it gets better. That camper van she was in broke down in the middle of the desert. It just overheated, and she had to be rescued by a ranger. So, and I kept running. She said,
Yeah.
"You just keep going," and she didn't stop my race or anything.
Incredible, incredible. Okay, so let's get into some sort of kind of practical training questions. Okay, so good client of mine, Nicky, he says, can you ask Dean, how much strength and conditioning do you do on top of the running?
I do quite a bit. In fact, I do. I consider my every waking moment a training moment. So
Okay.
from the moment I get up, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I start every day with 25 burpees. So I
Boom.
get out of bed. I'll tell you what. If you adopt this, you cannot have a bad day. If you start with 25 burpees every morning. So I start with burpees, and then one thing I never do is something you're doing right now is sit down. So
Sure.
throughout the course of the day, when I'm writing my
Yeah.
books or even interviewing,
Yeah.
so I'm constantly bouncing on my legs, and I'm barefoot as well. So I'm raising up on my toes, stretching my feet out. So I consider that part of a workout. And then
Amazing.
I have a body weight routine of hit training
Yeah.
that involves, push-ups, sit-ups, chair dips, um, burpees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's about a 12 to 14-minute routine, and it really elevates your heart rate. And I do that maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the day, just randomly. And then a couple of
Wow.
days a week, I've got an outdoor gym set up. So a couple of days a week, I'll just go outside and do a workout with some heavier weights.
And so this is on top of your general weekly running. I mean, I read somewhere earlier today, I must have listened to a YouTube clip that you regularly do a marathon a day or a half marathon a day.
Yeah, no, when I'm really training and when I've got a hard training block, I run a marathon before breakfast.
I know, I
I
saw
just
that.
get out and bang it out. And yeah, I mean, I want to get my base mileage pretty high before some of these races. So yeah, but I also do the cross training as well. I just think that having good overall muscle fitness is beneficial for running, and it's beneficial for your longevity.
I mean, can I ask you, Dean, you are 58, aren't you? I've got that right.
Well, I always clarify. You're talking about my chronological age. So my biological age is actually in my mid-30s. So
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, you look fantastic. I mean, do you mind me asking what your current stats are, how tall you are, and how much you actually weigh right now?
yeah, I'm about 5'9", and I weigh
Oh,
about 152. I've got
sh-
about 4.5% body fat.
wow.
Yeah, my
Wow.
resting heart rate's in the high 30s.
Sure, sure. Incredible. And how has all this changed for you? I'm 42 years old now, and I always say to my clients, I feel better than ever, and that's very much down to the lifestyle I lead. I say this all the time, and I'm actually writing a book myself. It's almost finished. It's called Don't Slow Down, and it's aimed at guys over the age of 30 and 40 and 50 who maybe think, hey, you know what, we're past it, but we're not, because we know that lifestyle is everything. But but you know, 58 is not a whippersnapper anymore in real terms. Obviously, you're a superhuman guy, but how does it change? How does the recovery change? How does your body? I mean, I know you've dedicated your life to this, and you've probably got a crazy mobility routine and stretching routine, and you do this for a living. But how is it different from, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Well, my speed has decreased markedly. So you notice your speed decreasing. So I've got to work twice as hard to run the same pace that I used to run comfortably. So I do work twice as hard. I just double the workload, but nothing comes easy anymore. The other thing that I've noticed is your muscle mass will disappear unless you keep up the lifting and the overall strength training. So I've really dedicated myself to strength training. The other thing I've noticed is that how important sleep is these days. As you get
Yes.
older, your sleep is not, the quality is not quite as good. So I really try to optimize my sleep quality. And I also, I just can't deviate from my diet, which is pretty refined right now. I mean, if I eat junk food, which I never do, it wrecks me. I mean, if I was to have you know, some ice cream right now, I would feel like crap for probably a couple days.
So
So
tell us
I just,
more about your diet and your kind of daily caloric intake.
yeah. So I tell people if I can't dig it from the earth or pick it from a tree or catch it with my hands,
Wow.
I don't eat it. So it's nothing packaged, refined, no any grains, anything that has to be processed. Rice has to be processed, barley, oats, wheat. I don't need any of that. So no bread, no pasta.
Hang on,
It all comes,
you're doing ultra marathon events. You're doing long distance events. Are you telling me you're going low carb?
absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I
Wow.
follow kind of a keto diet. So I'm using nut butters a lot for fuel.
Wow. Incredible.
It's counterintuitive because I mean, most runners think you got a pasta, you pasta load and carbo load before an event. But a lot of people are like me now. They found that doesn't help. In fact, it makes things worse. I mean, I remember standing at the start of the New York City Marathon one time and thinking, I'm bloated right now from last night's pasta feed. I was the
I've been
keynote
there.
speaker. Yeah, and we all had pasta, and I'm like, why did I do that to myself? I feel heavy, already.
Wow, incredible. This is, I mean, look, I've done everything, pre half marathons, pre tough mudders, from carb loading to actually going, very, very high fat and low carb. And it's so interesting to hear you say this. So do you have any idea about your daily caloric intake? I mean, I know in the nut butters, you can really get the calories in, right? They're very caloric.
Yeah, well, I think, counting calories is kind of misdirected as well because I think that source of the calories is just as important as the calorie itself. So I eat between, a typical day between 3 to 4,000 calories. But
Yeah,
again, it's, there's no, they all have very low glycemic indexes.
sure.
And, it is. And, there's a lot of it monounsaturated fat, medium chain triglycerides. So whether those are really contributing, to body fat or anything, which I don't have, I honestly believe you could eat a lot more calories if you just shift what you're eating.
Sure, sure. And so you are religious with this kind of way of eating every day, yeah? And your protein must be high.
Well, I wouldn't even say I'm religious. I've kind of used this approach where it's black and white. Like there's no, fuzzy gray. Like I either have a food that's acceptable or is not acceptable, and there's no such thing as a cheat day. Like when
Hmm.
I walk past a bakery and I smell like, bakery smell or a donut shop, my friends are salivating. It doesn't even register with me because I just know it's nothing I'll ever put in my body anymore. So I don't crave it at all. So I don't feel like I have superhuman willpower. I've just kind of, laid out the terms black and white and follow those terms.
I mean, this is incredible. This is incredible because, it would almost appear to somebody looking in from the outside that you do have superhuman discipline. But I really like the way you say you've almost just conditioned. And I suppose, if it doesn't make you feel good, if it's not going to make you perform, then what's the point, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started with there's a technique called forward projection that psychologists, use. And you project how you're going to feel if you do something and you let those feelings occupy you in the current moment of time. So, originally I thought, wow, I'd love to have that donut. But then I projected, God, you're going to be drowsy. You're going to feel lethargic. You're going to feel horrible about it. And, that just immediately squashed my idea of having that donut. But I use it the other way around as well with positive feedback. Like, when I don't want to go running, and let's face it, there are days when nobody wants to go running. I don't care if
Sure.
you're Dean Karnazes or whomever, you know, I use forward projection to think how much better you're going to feel when you're coming back through that door after your run.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
let that feeling occupy you. You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
we quite often with my clients, I say, look, do you want instant gratification from having that cake or that beer, or do you want the delayed gratification by, going out and doing that workout, or maybe saying no to a few things and waking up and feeling great the next day? So I'm totally with you. Dean, I'm aware of the time, and we're going to hopefully do about another 10 or 15 minutes. Another question. Nikki has bombarded me with quite a lot of questions. He said, can you ask Dean, how long before an event do you taper? Or does he actually believe that tapering is a little bit of a myth?
You know, I don't know the answer to that because I've tried both ways. I've tried like extensive 2 or 3 week tapers and had good races and had bad races. And I've also tried, no taper, just racing back to back, and I've had good races and bad races. So I don't profess to have the answer to that question. It's a good question. I think there's so many variables that go into it that, I always say, listen to everyone, follow no one. So, experiment with not tapering and experiment with lengthy tapers and see which works best for you, Nikki.
Brilliant. Okay, Nikki, we're going to get some more questions answered for you as well. So, Nikki also asked, do you have any set distances that you try and run every week? I know you were saying you normally do a kind of marathon before breakfast. Do you have kind of like, this is how many miles I must do over a 7-day period, or do you just kind of go with it?
I kind of go with it. I definitely go with that. I try, I quote unquote try to listen to my body as best I can, but some days I override, the way my body feels. The other thing I don't do is, like, people say, how many miles do you run every day? I don't run the same mileage every day. I think that's, a recipe for plateauing. It's something called the black hole, where you just do every workout, kind of to the best of your ability, and you just get stuck at that level. So some days I go very, very easy, and the next day, I will push incredibly hard.
Wow.
To the point of, almost collapsing.
Wow.
But push really, really hard one day and then go easy the next day, so that you can push harder than you previously would if you just did the same thing every day.
I hear you. Okay. What do you think about Jim Walmsley winning 3 Western States in a row and breaking the course record again? Some great questions, Nikki, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I was there.
Wow.
In fact, that's one of the reasons I'm looking so tired. I was just there. I was up there at the race yesterday, and I paced the guy for about 40 miles. So, Walmsley's amazing. He didn't set the record this year, but he set it 2018. So I think it was 29. It was 2018. So a couple of years ago, he set the record. But he's a phenomenal runner. He's a machine, and it'll be interesting to see. He looks like a runner. A lot of people look at me and they say, you're built a little more sturdy than most runners. And that's basically because I wanted to be doing this when I'm in my 50s. So let's see how long, what his longevity looks like. But right now he's unstoppable as far as, speed.
Amazing. And one final question from Nikki before we get into a few more is, what advice would you give to somebody that's going to go out and do their first ultra? Again, similar to John, what advice? Not pace, what advice?
Start slowly. Just start the race very slowly. You're going to have a lot of energy at the start, and you're going to have a lot of adrenaline, and everyone's going to charge out. And just remember that, the race is, if it's a 50-mile race, it's not a 49-mile race. It's a 50-mile race. So a lot of people that are charging out, going out really hard, are not going to make it, or they're going to end up being very, very slow at the end. So start out really conservatively and save your energy for the second half.
Great advice. Okay, here's one on injuries. And I remember reading recently that you said you've always been quite lucky in that you've never really had injuries. That may have changed somewhat, but a really good client of mine, Rachel, she's my longest standing client. We've been training over 12 years together, and she's done ultras. And she said, how do you manage injuries or stay injury free despite doing such high mileage?
Yeah, I've never had an injury, so I've been very fortunate in that regard. 3 decades of doing this, never had an overuse injury. And I think the key is cross training. I really believe that having good overall muscle strength is really important. I don't do a lot of flexibility stuff,
Really?
But I'm naturally very flexible. Like I can bend down and touch my palms on the ground without a problem with my knees locked. So I'm naturally very flexible, but I don't do a lot of any sort of flexibility work. I used to do a lot of yoga, the hot yoga. They call it Bikram yoga in in the hot studio. But since the pandemic, I haven't even been doing any of that. So I would say, cross train.
I would also, I mean, from what you've told me about your diet, it sounds like your diet is very, very, kind of, I don't really like to use the word clean, but, you probably, there's not a lot of inflammatory food sort of in that diet. Like, you've cut out a lot of like the starches and things like that. So it could be, it could be down to that as well, buddy,
Yeah, I mean, I look at myself through the lens of being the best animal that I can be. So that involves, not just training and cross training, but you're right, diet, good quality sleep that we talked about. All of these things I try to optimize for optimal performance. And certainly, if you're eating foods that cause inflammation, if your cortisol levels are high, that's going to negatively impact your performance and potentially lead to injuries as well.
Do you, I mean, how many hours of sleep, what is optimal for you right now? I mean, I love between 8 and 9 hours. I absolutely love it.
I have the great, privilege of not having to wake to an alarm most days. And it just depends. I mean, some nights 8 or 9 hours is great. Other nights after 4 or 5 hours, I feel I get up and no problem. So I let my body naturally wake, and there's no 2 nights are really the same.
I think, Dean, as well, just touching on the sleep there, I mean, it's so important. And in my book, I've actually said to the guys, look, we can teach you about calories and protein and this and all that, but understand that there's 2 key factors for me, and that's sleep and hydration. And actually, when the pandemic hit, it was, everyone's had different experiences from it. But from an alarm point of view, I no longer had crazy get up early alarms, and just the difference in being able to just sleep in a little bit, just a couple of hours, actually it changed everything for me. My recovery, my training, I got leaner, and that was all down to not having an alarm at 5 a.m. It's hitting you in the face, right?
I can't agree with you more.
Yeah. Okay. So we've already spoke about, the other stuff that you do to try and stay injury free. And that's obviously you're a big fan of doing the resistance training as well. David says, is preserving and maintaining muscle mass a priority for you, or even a consideration given the nature of your sport and the fact that you're just running?
No, it is very much a big focus of mine. And, I want to keep doing this until my 60s, 70s, even 80s. So I'm going to keep doing a lot of cross training. It is really something that I focus on quite extensively. And, unfortunately, a lot of runners don't. They just run, and, they're in and out of injuries. So I really, I'm not going to stop cross training.
It's really interesting, because as a fitness coach for the last 15 years, and I was a kind of a frustrated runner entering the industry, because I was always getting injured myself, and I was able to fix that, through doing stuff like we've discussed. But I would get clients come to me and they say, I want to improve my running. And I'll say, well, okay, do you do any strength and conditioning? Oh, no, I want to get quicker at running. Yeah, but okay, show me 10 squats. And then they can't even squat, parallel, or their knees are caving in. And I'm like, you want to get better at running, but you can't do 10 squats. So yeah, most runners just run, right? But it's the other stuff that you've got to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I train with guys during a run, and afterward, I'll challenge them just to do one pull-up. I mean, a single pull-up. And most of the people that just run, they can't do a single freaking pull-up. I'm like, that's obscene. Like you need to do a little bit of upper body conditioning.
Sure. Okay, so let's get into the kind of like the final 5 minutes. One thing that really stuck out for me there, Dean, I mean, this has been amazing, and I'm so grateful to you, is you just said, I want to carry on doing this into my 60s, my 70s, my 80s. Most guys I encounter, even in their 40s, are like, they've almost given up. And I'm not talking about when it comes down to doing ultra marathon events or anything. They're just giving up, dude. And you're there talking about, just keep pushing until your 80s. I mean, what advice would you give for the general guy over the age of 30, 40, and 50 who just thinks, time's gone, it's passed me by, I've got kids, I've got a busy job, blah, blah, blah?
First of all, I empathize with those feelings because it's, your body does change and it is demoralizing in a lot of ways. What advice, do I have? It doesn't have to be that way. And, I'm not really good at dispensing advice, but I try to lead by example. Maybe pick up a copy of A Runner's High and, read my story. And maybe that'll give you some hope and some inspiration. You can change. I'm an example of that. I just try to, do the best that I can, and people can look at me and say, well, if he's doing it at 58, I can probably do it at 48 or whatever. I can keep, he's a good role model. That's what I want to be.
You're kind of like, you've kind of got this almost, it's really interesting. You've got this kind of single-mindedness, but it doesn't come across as kind of like arrogant or, yeah, I'm better than you. It's quite unique, buddy. I've got to say, it's so refreshing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I try to encourage other people. I think, the more, if this planet was fitter, I think we'd all be a lot happier, at least in Western cultures. I mean, we don't have a problem with too many people being fit. We have just the opposite problem. So, the more the merrier. And it really, it brings me a lot of internal satisfaction to watch someone, change their life. And you're a coach. You've been doing this for 15 years. You know how it is.
It's incredible.
It's not the paycheck. It's the internal gratification you get from helping
100%,
someone.
100%. Yeah.
And sharing their joy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've said to people, I've not worked today in 15 years, because once you find what you love, it's not about the money. It's just about doing what you love. So here's the book. Thank you so much for sending me this, Dean. I'm halfway through it, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And one of the quotes before we end, I might get a little bit wrong, but you actually said, and it's really profound, you said, well, if running is a drug that is going to ultimately kill me, then bring it on. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, find what you love and let it kill you.
That's it.
I think that says it all. Yeah.
Find what you love and let it kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I said something like, if running's a drug that threatens my life, let it have me.
Yeah, because you're going to be doing this to the day. You're going to be doing this to the day you die, aren't you?
I tell people my finish line is a pine box.
And
when I'm 10 feet under in a box, then I'm finished.
And you're happy with that? You've accepted that, right?
I'm so dedicated and committed to that. That's just the way it's going to play out.
I just think that is so profound because, you see a lot of people say stuff like, I'll be happy when I do this, when I retire, when I do this. But yeah, I can just see you're just so happy living this life and in this moment. And you know what, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to carry on until I'm in that pine box.
Yeah, I mean, one day, 25 years from now, I hope, you see this guy with a big gray beard and, long gray hair at the London Marathon. You say, there's that Karnazes guy. He's still going. He's
Amazing.
at the back of the pack now, but he's still going.
Amazing. Dean, this has been a wonderful 40 minutes. I'm really, really grateful for you. Guys, listen, get out and get yourself a copy of A Runner's High. You'll find that with a simple Google search, or get yourself onto Amazon. It's a great book. Dean, obviously, I know things have been affected quite a lot with the pandemic. You haven't been able to compete. But what is the plan? What is the plan for you now as things start to hopefully open up and move in the right direction?
Well, if the COVID gods cooperate, I'm heading to Australia in August to run 1,000 miles across Australia. So that's in the works. I've worked with the Australian embassy, and they gave me a special visa. So hopefully in August I'll be heading down under to run across Australia.
I bet you cannot wait to do something in person, right?
I cannot wait to get on a plane.
Yeah,
fly somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Dean, I wish you all the best. Once again, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I know you probably get loads of these. My clients are like, you've really got Dean? I was like, yeah, I've got him. If you don't ask, you don't get. So we will end this recording now. And then once we get it out, it'll be on, Podomatic, Spotify. We'll put it on YouTube as well. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Dean Karnazes has been amazing value, and we hope it's given you some inspiration, guys. If you like this, please leave a comment, please subscribe to the channel, please share this around. And once again, thank you so much for listening. Dean, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much again, and enjoy, and let's hope that this event happens in Australia.
Yeah, I send my best from California.
Great stuff, buddy. Keep trucking, my friend.